Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at getting the coordinates that the user has clicked on a view, and in particular I'm going to look at how we can find out, when I say clicked I should say touched actually, but in this tutorial in particular we're going to look at how you can find out if the user touches various points on this image on their phone. How can we find out which points they've touched? And the first thing I'm going to do here is, this image looks a bit ugly. By the way, I don't have copyright rights to this image, so I'm going to change it later on, but this is just something to work with for the moment. And to make this look a bit nicer, well, later on one thing I'm going to do is save different versions of this image under different sizes in these different folders here, which makes it more likely to look good on different devices. But what I'm going to do for a moment is just change the way this image scales, because at the moment it's scaling so that it fits horizontally, but we've got gaps vertically. So in the layout activity underscore image for this particular view, this particular activity, I'm going to add an attribute here, scale type, and I'm going to set that equal to fit XY. And now if I run this, it's going to scale the image irrespective of aspect ratio so that it fits, it takes up the entire image view here, which is what I want. Now let's look at how to find out where the user touches on this image. And to do that, I'm going to go to my imageActivity.java, and I'm going to add a new method here. Let's call it private void add touch listener, and I'm going to call this method after I do set content view, which is very important, because if you add a touch listener before doing set content view in onCreate, then you'll get an error. So in onCreate, call set content view and then add the code that I'm about to add in a minute, which adds your touch listener. Let's just take a look at this. So that looks much better. Now it's scaled to fit horizontally and vertically. And in add touch listener, the first thing I need is I want to get a handle to my image view. And if I look at the layout for this activity, I gave this image the ID touch underscore image, so we will use that. And I'll use find view by ID again, and r.id dot and touch underscore image, and that will give me my view, and it's an image view, I know, so I'll declare a variable of the type image view. I'll call it image, and I'll set that equal to the return value of find view by ID, which I need to cast to an image view like this. So I'm just running this code from here, and let's do Control-Shift-O to add the import there. And now I want to add a touch listener to this image view. So I'm going to say image.setOnTouch listener, and here I'll say new space, and I'll do Control space for the autocomplete and hit return. And it's added this whole anonymous class here of the type view.onTouchListener, and I need to add the import there with Control-Shift-O, and then if we hover over it, we can see the documentation here, and it's the view.onTouchListener class. Let's put the semicolon in, and now the last thing I'm going to do in this particular tutorial is just to get the coordinates here and display them. So the coordinates that the user touches on the mobile screen on the image. So to do that, I can use this event object, which is passed to the onTouch method of this anonymous class here, and I can say float x equals event.getX and float y equals event.getY. And let's just output that. So to have a string that we can read, let's say string message equals, I and I could use string.valueOf to turn these floats into values, or I could do something like turn these floats into strings, or I could use the float class with a capital F and do toString. Or another way to do it is I could use string.format, and I could pass in a format string here, let's say coordinates, and let's pass in here in brackets %f, and I'll have, let's say, %.2f to get the coordinates to 2 decimal places. And finally, now I need to use the log.d method to just so I can see these coordinates, and I'll create a tag up here for debugging. I'll say private static final string debug tag equals, and I'll set that equal to my initials, which is what I did before. Or in fact, I think I already have one of these in the main activity. So if I have main activity here, and I think it's public, then I can use the debug tag from that, which actually probably makes more sense. So let's do that. And I'll output my message here showing the coordinates. And now I'll just save and run this application. And let's look at what's happening in the console. So it's uploading. And in a minute I'm going to go to DDMS. Let's just wait for a moment and check that it runs, that it installs and uploads okay. So once we see the success message, which is coming just about now, okay, not now, but in a second. There we go, success, finally. I'll click DDMS, and I'll use that filter that I set up in the tutorial on DDMS, my debug filter. And if I go to my application now and click various points on the image, whoops, got an error for some reason. And let's just take a look at what's happening here. So in fact my format specifier is wrong. If I look up here, somewhere in here, I've lost it now. Yeah, there we go. Format specifier .2f, missing format argument exception. In fact, what I forgot was, I think, very, very stupid. I forgot to actually put the coordinates in here. So if you are silently screaming at me from behind your monitor to put the coordinates in, then I do apologise. And if you were just confused, then I also apologise. Let's take another look. Let's just run this again. And I think this will hopefully work. So we're installing it, and let's go to DDMS and let's look at the emulator, and in just a second my image will hopefully appear. And here we go, there we go. So now if I click various points on this, let's select my debug output again, and click different points here, and there we go. And if we look at this debug output, we can see the coordinates that are being clicked, X and Y. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. And actually, while I've been creating this application, often I'll find some error. I've done something wrong usually, and usually I just re-record the tutorial. But I think I'm not going to this time, just because I wanted to show you that if and when you get errors, which you certainly will, especially that application has stopped type message, it's always worth just looking in the console or looking in the DDMS monitor here and scrolling right up to the top to the first bit of red that you see. You might have to go a long way, and then patiently scrolling down, and most of the time you'll eventually find a meaningful error message that tells you what you're doing wrong. And if you don't, then try stuff like cleaning the project, restarting your emulator, restarting Eclipse. And once, I swear, I even had to restart my whole computer to get the whole thing to work properly. But usually it's going to be something you've done, and usually there will be an error message, and you should start looking at the error messages from the top downwards. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.